Hello there, my sleepy knights. Tonight, we'll journey back for some medieval tales. The torches in the great hall of Castle Whitestone guttered in a sudden draught as the massive oak door swung open. Sir Gareth strode forward, his armor gleaming in the firelight, the sound of his boots echoing across the stone floor. At the far end, King Edmund sat upon his throne, his face a mask of restrained grief. "Your Majesty," Gareth said, dropping to one knee, his head bowed. "I came as soon as I received your summons." The king studied the knight before him. Sir Gareth of the Western Marches was not the most renowned of his knights, nor the most politically connected. But he was steadfast, honest, and most importantly, he knew the Black Fang Mountains better than any man alive. "Rise, Sir Gareth," the king commanded, his voice echoing in the vaulted chamber. "You know why I have summoned you." Gareth stood, meeting the king's gaze directly. "Your Majesty, I've only heard rumors." The king's hands tightened on the arms of his throne. "My son, Prince Rowan, has been missing for 3 moons now. The royal hunting party was attacked. Many good men died." His voice remained steady, but his eyes betrayed his pain. "My scouts have found evidence." He signaled, and a servant stepped forward, bearing a small wooden box. Inside lay a child's silver pendant, blackened as if by fire. Beside it rested something far more disturbing, an enormous scale that gleamed like burnished copper. "A lost dragon," Gareth breathed, recognizing the scale from the ancient texts he'd studied as a squire. "Yes," King Edmund confirmed, his voice hard with hatred. "We believed them extinct for a century, beast has returned, and it has taken my son." His voice broke before he mastered himself. "I've chosen you, Sir Gareth, because you know these mountains. Your father mapped their passes before you were born." Gareth's mind raced. Dragons were creatures of legend, monsters from his childhood tales. Yet, the evidence lay before him, undeniable. "I will find the prince, my king," he vowed, "and I will end this lost dragon." King Edmund's eyes flashed with grim satisfaction. "Bring me my son and the dragon's head, Sir Gareth, and you shall have lands and titles beyond what any knight might dream." But as Gareth left the great hall, it was not dreams of reward that filled his thoughts, but the impossibility of his task. To slay a legend and rescue a prince. Stories were full of such quests, but few had happy endings. It was 5 days later. Sir Gareth stood at the base of a cliff face, high in the Black Fang Mountains. The journey had tested even his considerable skill. Narrow ledges, treacherous winds, unexpected snowfall despite the spring season. But the signs had grown clearer with each passing day. Enormous claw marks, scouring the stone, charred remains of mountain goats, and most telling of all, a half-melted knight's dagger bearing the royal crest. Now before him gaped a cave entrance, its mouth wide enough to admit 3 mounted knights riding abreast. Smoke-blackened rocks surrounded the opening, and the smell of sulphur hung in the air. Gareth drew his sword, its familiar weight comforting in his hand. The enchanted blade, blessed by the temple priests and forged with mountain iron, was said to be capable of piercing dragon scales. Whether the old tales were true, he would soon discover. With shield raised, he entered the darkness, a flickering torch held high in his left hand. The passage sloped downward immediately, the floor worn smooth as glass. Signs of the dragon's habitation were everywhere, claw marks scoring the stone walls, the lingering smell of smoke, piles of bones from its meals. But as he descended deeper, Gareth noticed something odd. Scratches in the cave wall that formed pictures. A drawing of a dragon, what appeared to be a small figure with a crown. The passage opened suddenly into an enormous cavern, its ceiling lost in darkness high above. And there, coiled atop a mound of scattered items, some glittering like treasure, others oddly domestic, waited the last dragon of Alberon. The creature was magnificent even in the dim light, copper scales gleaming like newly minted coins, wings folded against its massive body, ancient eyes regarding Gareth with unmistakable intelligence. It rose to its full height, unfurling wings that stretched from one side of the cavern to the other, and released a roar that shook loose stones from the ceiling. "Dragon," Gareth shouted, his voice nearly lost in the creature's thunderous challenge. "Return the king's son." The dragon answered with a blast of flame that Gareth barely deflected with his shield. And so the battle erupted with terrifying intensity. The dragon's fire forced Gareth to dive behind a rock formation. His sword strikes glanced off hardened scales. Both combatants circled, looking for an advantage in the uneven terrain of the cavern floor. Gareth's shoulder burned where claws had found a gap in his armor. The dragon favored one wing, where Gareth's blade had struck true. Neither could gain decisive advantage. Just as Gareth readied himself for a final, desperate charge, a small figure darted between them. "Stop. Please. Stop." A boy of perhaps 7 years, dressed in rough garments, stood with arms outstretched between the knight and the dragon. Despite his wild appearance, the golden circlet still visible beneath tangled hair confirmed what Gareth already knew. This was Prince Rowan. "Please don't hurt her," the prince cried. "Please. She saved me." Both knight and dragon froze, the boy's intervention creating an impossible moment of truce. "Your Highness," Gareth said, lowering his sword slightly, "I've come to return you to your father." "No." The boy backed toward the dragon, who lowered her massive head protectively. "My father doesn't understand. No one does." In the flickering torchlight, Gareth could see that the prince appeared unharmed. Indeed, he seemed healthy and unafraid, despite living in the presence of the kingdom's most feared creature. "She could have killed me many times," Prince Rowan continued, his small hand resting on the dragon's scaled neck with casual familiarity. "But she saved me instead. The bandits killed everyone else. I was lost in the forest for days. When I fell in the snow, I thought I would die. The dragon made a sound unlike anything Gareth had ever heard before. A low rumble that seemed almost gentle, protective. "She brought me here, kept me warm, found food for me," the prince continued. "You see, she's my friend, Sir Knight. She's the last of her kind, all alone in these mountains." Gareth lowered his sword completely, the impossible truth before him challenging everything he'd been told about dragons. "Your father grieves for you, Your Highness. He believes you've taken against your will." I wasn't at first, the boy admitted. "But I choose to stay now. Father would only have her killed." The dragon watched Gareth with ancient, intelligent eyes. eyes that seemed to understand exactly what hung in the balance. "Your Highness," Gareth said finally, I cannot force you to return against your will, but neither can I leave you here forever. Your father is the king, and you are his only heir. What if... Prince Rowan began hesitantly. "What if you told my father what you've seen? That she protected me. That you know she's the last of her kind?" Gareth shook his head. "No. Your father's hatred of dragons runs deep, Your Highness. The wars of your grandfather's time left scars that haven't yet healed. The boy's face fell, but then brightened with sudden inspiration. "Then don't tell him you found me just yet. Return with some proof that I'm alive and well. Bring him this." He removed the royal signet ring he wore on a leather cord around his neck. "Tell him you've tracked me to these mountains, but need more time. And that will give us more time." Time. Time for what, Your Highness? "Time to prepare," the boy said, with unexpected wisdom. "I need to show my father that she deserves to live. The dragons aren't the monsters he believes them to be." Gareth studied the earnest face of the prince, the protective stance of the dragon, and the evidence of their peaceful cohabitation around the cavern. Everything he had been taught told him to complete his mission. Slay the dragon, return the prince. But what he saw before him challenged those certainties. "I'll return to your father with the ring," Gareth said at last. "But, Your Highness, we will need more than time. We will need a plan." The great hall fell silent as Gareth approached the throne. His armor still bearing the marks of his mountain journey. King Edmund leaned forward, eyes flaring with desperate hope. Sir Gareth, you have news of my son. Gareth knelt, drawing forth the signet ring. Your Majesty, I bring proof the prince still lives. I've tracked him to the eastern face of the Black Fang Mountains. The king took the ring with trembling hands. And the dragon. I've seen signs of the creature, Gareth answered truthfully. But I require more time and supplies to complete my mission. The mountains are treacherous, and I believe caution will serve better than haste. King Edmund studied the knight's face. This is just a ring. You've seen my son, spoken with him. I've seen evidence he moves freely and he lives, Gareth replied, choosing his words very carefully. I believe with more time I can ensure his safe return. After a long moment, the king nodded. 2 weeks, Sir Gareth. Take what men and supplies you may need. Your Majesty, with respect, this mission requires stealth rather than force. I would go alone, as I have been. The king's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. 2 weeks, not a day more. And as Gareth left the great hall, he felt the weight of another pair of eyes upon him. Sir Darian, the king's champion, watched from the shadows, his expression unreadable. Gareth had never trusted the man, too hungry for glory, too quick to volunteer for missions that would bring him recognition. For now, though, Gareth had more immediate concerns. Your father has given us 2 weeks, Gareth explained to Prince Rowan upon his return to the cave. 2 weeks, no more. The prince sat cross-legged beside the dragon he called Ember, sharing a meal of roasted mountain hare. The great beast had accepted Gareth's presence with wary tolerance, seeming to understand that the knight now posed no immediate threat. Then we must be ready, Rowan said, father needs to meet Ember himself, to see that she's gentle and wise. Gareth shook his head. Your father would never come alone to such a meeting. He would bring knights, archers. It would be a trap, Your Highness. Then we must convince him before he comes, the prince insisted. Show him that the dragons were never the monsters our stories claim. And so, over the following days, an unlikely alliance formed between the knight, the prince, and the dragon. While Ember hunted in the high peaks, Gareth and Rowan explored deeper into the cave system. And what they discovered changed everything Gareth thought he knew about dragons. In a chamber far from the main cavern, ancient drawings covered the walls. Not childish scratches, but sophisticated images, showing dragons and humans working together, farming, building, even healing. Dragons breathing controlled flame to forge metal. Humans riding dragons through skies filled with stars. These must be thousands of years old, Gareth marveled, his torch illuminating page after page of history no human had seen for centuries. Even more remarkable were the scrolls they found, preserved in stone containers. Writings in an ancient human dialect that Gareth could partially decipher from his studies. They spoke of a time when dragons and humans lived in harmony, before wars and misunderstandings drove them apart. This changes everything, Gareth said. These scrolls, these drawings, they prove dragons weren't always our enemies. The prince nodded eagerly. Now, we just need to convince Father. Gareth began preparing the prince for the inevitable meeting with his father. They practiced what Rowan would say, how he would explain his time with Ember. The dragon, for her part, seemed to understand the gravity of their plan, allowing Rowan to demonstrate how she would behave in the king's presence. Meanwhile, Gareth created packages of evidence, carefully selected scrolls, drawings copied from the cave walls, even a small chest of dragon scales Ember had shed naturally. Each night, he would leave these where the king's scouts might find them, gradually preparing the ground for the truth. But fate rarely allows for perfect plans. On the 10th day, as Gareth returned from placing another evidence package, he spotted movement on the path below. Armor glinting in the afternoon sun. Sir Darian, leading a small party of knights, ascending the mountain. Gareth raced back to the cave, his heart pounding. "We've been discovered," he told Rowan and Ember. "The king's champion approaches with men." "How?" the prince asked, his face pale. "We've been so careful." Darian must have grown suspicious. He's always resented me. Gareth checked his sword. He was jealous that I received this job. You should hide deeper in the cave while I intercept them. But the prince shook his head. "No. If they found us, they'll keep coming. It's time for my plan, ready or not." "Your Highness, I am still your prince," Rowan said firmly. "And I say we stand our ground. Ember will not harm them unless they attack first. I will speak to Sir Darian. Make him understand." Against better judgment, Gareth agreed. They positioned themselves at the cave entrance, the prince in front, Gareth at his side, Ember visible but not threatening within the shadow of the cave mouth. When Sir Darian's party rounded the final bend in the path and saw them, chaos erupted. Knights drew swords, archers knocked arrows, and Darian himself shouted in triumph. "Stand aside, Sir Gareth. The prince is bewitched by the beast." "I am not bewitched," Rowan called back. "Ember saved me. She's been protecting me." "Lies spread by the creature's magic," Darian spat. "Your father sent me to finish what the traitor Sir Gareth would not." He raised his sword. "Men, prepare to..." "You will listen to me." The prince's voice rang with authority that belied his years. "I am Rowan, son of Edmund, heir to the throne of Alberon, and I command you to lower your weapons." was the shock of hearing such command from a child, or perhaps some vestige of loyalty to the royal bloodline. But the knights hesitated. Darian's sword remained high, but the others lowered their weapons slightly. The dragon could have killed me many times, Rowan continued, stepping forward. Instead, she saved me from death in the snow, fed me, protected me. Everything my father believes about dragons is wrong. They were once our allies, not our enemies. Darian sneered. Childish fantasy. Stand aside, Your Highness. Let us do our duty. Your duty is to me, Rowan replied. And I say you will not harm this dragon. And for a tense moment, no one moved. Then, Darian signaled his men. Take the prince, kill the beast, and the traitor. As the knights advanced, Ember moved with unexpected speed, placing herself between the threat and Prince Rowan. Gareth drew his sword, standing firm beside her. The prince refused to move, his small figure dwarfed by the confrontation around him. But before the first blow could fall, a horn blast echoed across the mountainside. All eyes turned to see a much larger force ascending the path, and at its head, the unmistakable figure of King Edmund himself. Father, Rowan cried. Darian turned, surprised but quickly composing himself. Your Majesty, we found the prince. The dragon has him in its thrall, and Sir Gareth has betrayed you. Silence, the king commanded, his eyes fixed on his son, standing unharmed before a creature from a nightmare. Silence all. Rowan, are you well? I am, Father, the prince called back. Please, call off your men. Let me explain. The king raised his hand, halting his forces. He dismounted, approaching slowly, his hand on his sword, Explain quickly, my son. That beast stands behind you, ready to strike. She has never hurt me, Rowan said. She saved me when I was lost in the mountains. Everything you believe about dragons is wrong, Father. The boy gestured to Gareth. Show him what we found. Gareth stepped forward cautiously, producing the ancient scrolls and drawings they had discovered. Your Majesty, these were hidden deep in the cave. They show a different history than the one we've been taught. Dragons and humans once lived in peace. The king barely glanced at the evidence, his eyes never leaving the dragon. A clever deception. Dragons are killers, boy. They destroyed entire villages in your grandfather's time. Because we hunted them first, Rowan cried. We drove them from their lands, killed their young. This is the last dragon, Father. The very last. And she chose mercy over vengeance when she found me. King Edmund's face hardened. Stand aside, Rowan. I'll not ask again. I will not, the prince replied, tears streaming down his face. If you want to kill her, you'll have to kill me first. The king blanched. Bewitchment, just as Darian said. Archers. A dozen bows raised in unison. Gareth moved to shield the prince, but Rowan stood firm, his arms outstretched before Ember. Father, please. What happened next would later be told and retold throughout the kingdom. As the king raised his hand to give the order to fire, a whistling sound cut through the air. From the ridge above, arrows flew, not from the king's men, but from hidden positions in the rocks. Bandits, dozens of them, had used the confrontation as cover to surround the royal party. The same bandits, Gareth realized with sudden clarity, who had attacked the royal hunting party months before. The first volley felled 3 of the king's knights. The second was aimed directly at King Edmund himself. Without hesitation, Ember the dragon launched from her position, her massive wings carrying her forward with incredible speed. She placed her body between the king and the incoming arrows, roaring in pain as they struck her scales. "Father," Rowan cried, running to the king. For a frozen moment, King Edmund stared in disbelief at the dragon that had just saved his life. Then, battle erupted around them as bandits swarmed down from the ridges. Knights fought desperately against the unexpected attack. Darian proved his worth, his sword claiming 3 bandits in quick succession. Gareth found himself fighting back to back with men who had moments before been prepared to kill him. But it was Ember who turned the tide. The dragon rose into the air despite her wounds, raining fire upon the bandit positions, careful to avoid the king's men. Her massive tail swept attackers from the narrow path. Her claws tore through those who came too close. When the last bandit fell, an uneasy quiet descended upon the mountainside. Ember landed heavily near the cave entrance, blood flowing from a dozen arrow wounds. Rowan ran to her side, tears flowing freely now. "Help her," he begged his father. "Please." King Edmund stood motionless, his worldview visibly crumbling as he processed what he had witnessed. The dragon he had come to kill had saved his life, protected his son, fought alongside his knights. His eyes met Gareth's. "You knew." It wasn't a question. I discovered the truth, Your Majesty," Gareth replied. "As you have today." The king approached the wounded dragon slowly, his hand no longer on his sword. Ember watched him with pain-clouded eyes, but made no threatening move. "You saved my son," the king said quietly. "And now, you've saved me as well." He knelt beside the great creature, touching one of the wounds gently. "Master Darian, fetch the royal physician quickly." Darian stared in disbelief. "Your Majesty, you cannot mean to. I said quickly." king roared, his authority brooking no argument. As the physician worked to remove arrows and treat Ember's wounds, the king sat with his son, listening at last to the full story of his rescue. Gareth showed him the ancient scrolls and drawings, explaining their significance. All this time, King Edmund said finally, our histories were wrong, or deliberately falsified. Not entirely, Father, Rowan said. There were wars between humans and dragons, terrible ones. But they weren't always our enemies. He looked at Ember with unbridled affection. And they don't have to be in the future. The king was silent for a long moment, weighing centuries of belief against the evidence of his own eyes. Well, what would you have me do, my son? Let her live in peace, Rowan said immediately. Establish these mountains as a sanctuary, and let me visit her. He hesitated. I know I must return to the castle, to my duties. But Ember is my friend. I won't abandon her. King Edmund looked to Gareth. And you, Sir Knight, what would you counsel? Gareth considered carefully. A new beginning, Your Majesty. A chance to right ancient wrongs. Perhaps one day, if there are more dragons, to rebuild what was lost between our kinds. Three days later, when Ember's wounds had begun to heal, a remarkable procession descended from the mountains. At its head rode King Edmund with Prince Rowan before him on his saddle. Behind them came Sir Gareth, carrying the ancient dragon scrolls. And most remarkably of all, walking with careful dignity despite her injuries, came Ember. The people of the nearest village fled indoors, the sight of a living dragon approaching with their king. But as days passed and Ember remained peaceful, curiosity overcame fear. Children were the first to approach, marveling at her scales and gentle demeanor. The adults followed more cautiously. True to his word, King Edmund established the Blackfang Mountains as royal sanctuary. No dragon would be hunted there, no scales harvested, no eggs stolen. In time, watchtowers were built along the borders, manned by a new order of knights, dedicated to protecting the sanctuary and its sole inhabitant. Sir Gareth, having proven both his courage and wisdom, was appointed first knight of the Dragon Guard. His duty was not only to protect Ember, but to study the ancient scrolls and drawings, to recover the lost knowledge of human-dragon cooperation. Prince Rowan divided his time between royal duties at the castle and visits to his dragon friend. Under Gareth's guidance, he too studied the ancient knowledge, preparing for a day when he would rule, perhaps oversee a new era of peace between the species. And Ember, no longer the last dragon hiding in fear, took to the skies above her sanctuary, her copper scales gleaming in the sunlight. Living legend reborn from the shadows of myth. Many years later, when Prince Rowan had grown into a young man, and Sir Gareth's hair had begun to grey, Ember led them to a hidden chamber deep within her mountain home. There, nestled in a bed of heated stones, lay 3 large eggs, their shells gleaming with iridescent patterns. She wasn't the last after all, Gareth marveled, understanding at last why Ember had been so fiercely protective of her cave. Rowan placed a gentle hand on one egg, feeling the life stirring within. Not the last, he agreed. The first. Inside the medieval apothecary shop, dried herbs hung from weathered ceiling beams in neat bundles. A fire crackled beneath bubbling copper pots, filling the air with the sweet scent of healing brews. The apothecary worked methodically in the dim light, grinding leaves with his mortar and pestle, while checking each jar's contents against his inventory list. Rain pelted the leaded glass windows as evening settled over the town. He paused his work, listening to the steady drumming. The storm had grown fierce enough to drive most townspeople indoors, leaving the narrow streets empty, save for the occasional hurried vicar rushing past his shop. The shelves around him held countless glass vials, each labeled in his careful hand. Some contained common remedies: feverfew, chamomile, willow bark, while others held rarer substances: their contents gleaming mysteriously in the firelight. A collection of surgical tools lay clean and ready on a worn wooden table, their polished surfaces reflecting the warm glow of fat burning lamps. It was then that the door burst open with a gust of wind and rain. A knight staggered in, one hand pressed onto their side, the other steadying themselves against the doorframe. Water dripped from their armor onto the stone floor. "I require treatment," the knight said, voice muffled by their helmet. Despite the obvious pain, they remained rigidly upright. The apothecary moved quickly to examine the wound. "You'll need to remove some armor. The cut needs proper cleaning." "No." The knight stepped back. "Bind it as it is. I cannot remove the armor." "That will lead to infection. At least let me. Just bind it," the knight insisted, tension clear in their voice. I can pay well." The apothecary frowned, but gathered his supplies. As he approached with clean bandages, he noticed the quality of the armor. Fine steel worked with subtle details that marked royal craftsmanship. Yet there were no identifying marks or heraldry. An unusual combination that raised questions he knew better than to ask. Thunder rolled overhead as he began his work, the night remaining silent and still beneath his hands. The wound was deep, but clean, made by a sharp blade rather than a ragged weapon. Another detail that didn't match the typical tavern brawl or bandit attack. But that, too, he kept to himself. He worked carefully in the flickering light, cleaning what he could reach of the wound through gaps in the armor. The knight's breathing was measured but strained, each small movement carefully controlled. Despite their rigid posture, he could sense their growing weakness. Whatever had caused this wound, the knight was far from safety, and refusing proper treatment would only worsen their condition. As he reached for more bandages, a flash of lightning illuminated the shop. In that brief moment, he caught a glimpse of something that made him pause. A subtle pattern etched into the armor's shoulder plate. One he'd definitely seen before in the royal court's guard. But before he could process this detail, thunder crashed overhead, and the knight swayed slightly, their composed facade beginning to crack. The apothecary bent closer to examine the wound, frowning as he noticed an unusual purple tinge at its edges. His fingers froze. He knew that color, a telltale sign of nightshade-based poison, the kind used exclusively by royal assassins. The wound is poisoned, he said quietly, straightening up. You need the armor off. Now. The knight stiffened. Impossible. Just bind it, and He'll be dead by dawn. He moved to his shelves, quickly gathering ingredients. The poison's already spreading. See how your fingers tremble? The knight looked down at their gauntleted hand, now visibly shaking. You're certain? Purple-tipped nightshade. Royal court poison. I've seen it before. He began grinding herbs with swift, practiced movements. It'll reach your heart within hours, without treatment. Thunder crashed outside as the knight seemed to wage an internal battle. Finally, they spoke, voice weaker than before. You cannot tell anyone what you see. I take confidences seriously, but we're wasting time. The knight struggled with the armor clasps, movements growing clumsy. The apothecary stepped forward to help, carefully removing the chest plate. The wound beneath was worse than he thought. Purple veins spreading outward like dark lightning. The helmet, he insisted, mixing herbs into a paste. The poison will affect your mind soon. I will need to check your eyes for. The night swayed suddenly, catching themselves against a table. Vials rattled. No, I cannot. You can, and you must. He stepped closer, voice firm. Now. With trembling hands, the knight reached for their helmet. There was a moment of hesitation. Then they lifted it away. Long dark hair fell free, framing a face the apothecary had never thought to see again. Despite the years between then and now, he knew those eyes immediately. The princess held his gaze, chin lifted despite her obvious weakness. Hello, Thomas, she said softly. He stared, words failing him. The girl he'd loved in secret, the princess who'd been his childhood friend until duty separated them. She stood before him now, poisoned and in disguise. Your Highness, he managed finally, healer's instincts warring with shock. She stumbled then, poison taking its toll. He caught her automatically. Years of formality forgotten in urgency. She felt smaller without the armor, more like the girl he remembered. Well, she said, attempting a weak smile. This isn't quite how I imagined seeing you again. The poison's purple traces were spreading visibly now. Dark veins creeping up her neck. Her skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and her breathing grew more labored. Thomas pushed aside his shock and confusion. forcing himself to focus on the immediate threat. "We must act quickly," he said, guiding her to a chair. "The poison is spreading faster than I feared." He turned back to his workbench, hands moving swiftly among his supplies. "I need to know exactly when you were wounded." I think 2 hours ago," she managed, gripping the chair's arms as another wave of dizziness hit. 2 hours ago, just outside the city's walls. Thomas calculated quickly. 2 hours. The poison would reach her heart by dawn. Less time than he'd hoped, but enough if they worked quickly. He refused to consider the alternative. Not when he just found her again. Even under these impossible circumstances. "Stay with me," he urged, reaching for his strongest antidote herbs. "We have work to do." Thomas worked quickly at his bench, crushing herbs with shaking hands as he tried to process the reality before him. The Princess Elizabeth sat watching him, her beautiful face growing paler by the minute. "I need to know what really happened," he said, keeping his voice steady. Still direct as ever. She managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Some things haven't changed." "Many things have changed, Your Highness." He emphasized the title slightly, measuring dried foxglove with careful precision. Don't She gripped the chair tighter as another wave of dizziness hit. Please, don't call me that. Not here. Not now. He added the foxglove to his mortar, grinding it perhaps harder than necessary. What should I call you then? The knight who burst into my shop? The princess who vanished from court without a word? The girl who... He stopped himself, focusing on the herbs. The girl who broke your heart. Her voice was quiet. We need to focus on the poison, he said firmly, though his hand had stilled. I'm seeing signs of nightshade, but there's something else. Something that's making it spread faster. She nodded, professional despite her growing weakness. Monkshood, probably. They've been experimenting with combinations. They? Who exactly is trying to kill you, Elizabeth? She met his gaze, and for a moment he saw past the years of separation to the girl who used to sneak out of the castle gardens to meet him. Members of my court, my own court. I've been investigating corruption, getting too close to the truth, apparently. Thomas turned back to his workbench, adding ingredients to a copper pot, heating over the fire. The familiar motions helped steady him. That explains the disguise. No, I never thought I'd see you in armor. You'd be surprised what I've learned to do. She watched him work, eyes growing unfocused. I needed to become more than just a princess in a tower. And now, you're a poisoned knight in an apothecary shop. He stirred the mixture, trying to keep his tone light despite his growing concern. The poison was now spreading faster. "At least," she said softly, "at least it brought me back to you." He nearly dropped his spoon, but before he could respond, she slumped forward, consciousness finally giving way to the poison's effects. Thomas caught her just before she hit the floor, his heart racing with both old feelings and new fear. The antidote wasn't ready, and time was running out. "You need to stay awake," Thomas said, supporting Elizabeth as she stirred back to consciousness. The antidote requires multiple stages, and I need your help. She blinked, forcing her eyes to focus. Then tell me what to do. He helped her to the workbench, keeping one arm around her waist as she swayed. "First, we need to counteract the nightshade. Then, the monk's hood. But something's making them work together unusually well." As he worked, combining ingredients with swift precision, Elizabeth watched his hands. "You are always good at this. Even in the castle gardens, you knew every plant's purpose." "The poison's affecting your mind," he said quietly. "It's making you speak thoughts you'd usually keep hidden." "Truth serum," she managed, a weak laugh. "Of course. They are clever." She gripped the bench as another wave of dizziness hit. "Though perhaps not as clever as they think." Thomas added crushed belladonna berries to his mixture, trying to focus on the task rather than her words. "This first stage needs to simmer," for exactly 7 minutes. Count with me. It'll help keep you alert. Remember how we used to count stars in the garden? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Every night, until they called me back inside. He kept stirring, jaw tight. Elizabeth, I kept every letter you sent me, she continued, the truth serum loosening her tongue. Even after I had to stop replying. Father's orders, of course. A princess couldn't be seen corresponding with a commoner. His voice was sharp, but his hands remained steady as he measured out the next ingredients. With anyone who made me happy. She reached for a jar he needed. They were afraid I'd choose differently. Choose you. The mixture bubbled, giving off purple steam. Thomas added powdered herbs, counting under his breath. You made your choice clear enough. Did I? Her voice crackled. Or did I just do what was expected? What they told me would keep you safe. He paused, looking at her properly for the first time since the revelation. Keep me safe. They threatened to have you removed from the city. Permanently. The truth spilled out like water. I couldn't be the reason. Thomas's hands stilled on the mortar. So, you pushed me away instead. It seemed kinder than having you killed. She smiled bitterly. Though watching you leave nearly killed me anyway. The mixture turned a dangerous red. Thomas quickly added more herbs, forcing himself to focus. The monk's hood is reaching your heart. We need to work faster. She nodded, then stumbled. He caught her again, and for a moment, they were too close. Years of separation evaporating in shared breath. I never stopped, she whispered. The truth serum pulling words from her heart. Loving you, I mean. Thomas's hands tightened on her arms. Elizabeth, the poison is making me honest. Finally. She met his gaze steadily despite her weakness. Every time I heard news of your success, your healing work, I was so proud and so lonely. He helped her back to her chair, movements gentle despite his turmoil. We need to focus on saving your life. The past is right here. She interrupted. In this shop, with both of us finally speaking truth. The antidote bubbled, demanding attention. Thomas returned to his work, adding the final ingredients with trembling hands. If you survive this, what then? You're still a princess. I'm still the man I should have fought for. Her voice was growing weaker, but her words remained clear. Perhaps that's why I'm here. The poison brought me back to you, but the truth serum, that's showing me what I need to do next. The antidote turned a clear, bright blue. Thomas lifted it from the fire, heart pounding with more than just urgency. It's ready. But Elizabeth, the things you're saying are what I've wanted to say for years. She reached for the antidote with shaken hands. Now, are you going to help me live long enough to prove it? The final stage is complicated, Thomas said, holding the bright blue antidote. It requires blood from both of us. A binding agent. Elizabeth's eyes widened slightly. You mean blood magic? I wouldn't have thought you'd... I learned many things. After leaving, he replied, preparing a small knife. Some less orthodox than others. The candlelight cast dancing shadows as he carefully cut his palm, letting drops fall into the antidote. The liquid hissed and darkened. Your turn, he said softly, offering her the knife. Their fingers brushed as she took it. The truth serum's getting stronger, she warned. Whatever I say next, then perhaps we should work quickly. But he didn't move away as she made her cut. Their blood mixing in the potion. The antidote began to glow, casting their faces in ethereal light. There are positions, she said suddenly, words rushing out. At court, a royal physician is needed. Someone trusted. Someone who could work closely with the princess. Thomas still. Elizabeth, I've watched you build this. She gestured at his shop. Your independence, your reputation. I know what I'm asking you to give up. Do you? His voice was rough. Last time I was at court was different. I was different. She gripped his arm, leaving a small, bloody handprint. I'm not that scared, girl, anymore. I'm offering you a choice this time, not taking it away. antidote pulsed between them, growing brighter. And what of your court conspirators? They'll be dealt with. But I need... She swayed slightly, poison still coursing through her. I need someone I can trust. Someone who knows both medicine and truth. Thomas looked at their mixed blood in the glowing potion. Years of longing, warring with hard-earned wisdom. The court nearly destroyed us once. Then help me change it. Her eyes were bright, not just as my physician, as my partner, The word hung unspoken between them as Thomas lifted the antidote. Drink first. Live. Then we'll discuss terms. She took the vial with trembling hands. I mean every word. Poison or no poison. I know, he said softly. That's what terrifies me. The antidote glowed brighter as she drank. Their mingled blood carrying healing through her veins. The purple traces of poison began to fade from her skin. But the truth serum's effects intensified. I dream of you, she confessed, words spilling out. Dreams of what could have been, of what still could be. Thomas turned away, checking her pulse. Professional mask slipping. Elizabeth, please. No, listen. She caught his hand. Their blood still mingling. I'm offering you more than a position. I'm offering you a way to stay. To be near me without suspicion. To help me make real change. And if I refuse, then I'll respect your choice. But know this. I'm not leaving your life again. Position or no position. I'll find ways to see you, to work with you, to He pressed a finger to her lips, stopping the flow of truth. The antidote needs time to work. Rest. But she gripped his wrist, moving his hand away. No more waiting. No more silence. The poison brought me here. But this truth serum is making me brave. I love you, Thomas. Still. Always. And I'm tired of pretending duty means denying my heart. Thunder crashed outside as Thomas struggled with her words, with the reality of this moment. The princess he'd loved and lost, now offering him everything he'd ever dreamed of. But at what cost? Your life at the court, he began carefully. Your responsibilities will be easier with someone I trust at my side. She touched his face, her hand still bearing traces of their mingled blood. Someone who knows both healing and truth. Someone who can help me transform the court instead of being transformed by it. The antidote's glow was fading, but something else was growing stronger between them. Something that had survived years of separation, duty, and denial. Dawn comes soon, he said finally. The antidote will need watching through the night. She smiled, reading acceptance in his words. Then we have hours yet to plan our future. The storm raged outside, but inside the shop, truth and healing worked their magic as two hearts once torn apart found their way back to each other. Thomas hovered beside Elizabeth, watching the slow return of color to her cheeks. The antidote had finally purged the poison from her system. She breathed more easily now, though an exhausted tremor still ran through her limbs. That was close, he murmured, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. The feverish heat had receded, leaving her skin cool and clammy. Another hour, and I might have been too late. She managed a small, wry smile. then I owe you my life again. He shook his head. You should rest. But even as she tried to lean back, her eyes darted around the apothecary, settling on her discarded armor. I can't stay here. My enemies will think they've won if I don't return to court. Thomas exhaled. You nearly died tonight. Give yourself time. She pushed herself upright. Time is exactly what I don't have. There's corruption in the palace. People who'd stop at nothing to see me out of the picture for good. If I'm gone too long, they'll move unopposed. Her gaze flicked to him. That's why I need you. He looked away, torn. I left to avoid these very intrigues. You know that better than anyone. I do, she said softly. Finally, Thomas reached for her hand. If you return to court, you'll be in danger every moment. I'm in danger wherever I go. She met his eyes, determination etched on her face. All I can do is meet it head on, with help from someone I trust. The words set his heart pounding. What exactly do you want me to do? I'm offering you royal physician. I trust no one else with my health or the kingdom's. Thomas let out a long breath. The memory of the council's cold marble halls tightened his chest. That's a big step. You know how they'll talk if you bring me back. Then let them talk. The only thing I care about is whether you'll accept. He thought of the early years, when there were barely more than children, roaming the palace gardens, when he shouldn't have even been there. But he couldn't lose her again. Not like this. I'll do it. If it means I can keep you alive, and maybe root out the source of these attacks. I'll return to court. She squeezed his hand, a spark of that old warmth flaring between them. Thank you. I promise. This time, it'll be different. He helped her to her feet, and she tested her balance. The deep cut still twinged, but she stood taller with each breath. pressing one hand against fresh bandages. We need a plan. My father will demand answers about this wound. Thomas bent to retrieve her breastplate, carefully setting it on a table. We'll say you were ambushed outside the city walls. That's not far from the truth. As for the rest, we'll keep our findings to ourselves until we know who's behind the poison. She nodded, taking a measured step forward. Yes, we'll move quietly. Together. A faint pink light from the rising sun crept through the apothecary windows, illuminating the warm stone floor. The storm had blown over, leaving a hushed calm in its wake. Outside, a new day beckoned. Elizabeth met Thomas's gaze, and for a moment they were neither princess nor apothecary, but two souls who drifted apart and now stood on the brink of something new. She lifted her chin. Shall we? Thomas paused, letting the old fears and new hopes settle in his chest. Then he offered her a soft, resolute smile, the kind he once gave her as a boy. Lead the way, Your Highness. And side by side, they stepped out into the dawn. Despite the challenges awaiting them, palace conspiracies, suspicious courtiers, and the burden of old wounds, they carried a shared resolve to face it all together. For the first time in years, Thomas felt not only the pull of duty, but the promise of what might be if they dared to claim it. Night again. Should have gathered some wood earlier. Damned leg. Always worse when the weather turns. Let's see here. Half a loaf. Bit of cheese, enough for tonight. What else? I need to check my snares come morning. If the rain hasn't drowned the rabbits first. The north wind howls across the moor, like souls in torment seeking shore. No, that's not right. The north wind howls across the heath, like warriors crying past their death. Yes, that's better. Not good, but better, I suppose. At least the rain stopped. I might get some sleep after all tonight. Someone's coming. At this hour? In this weather? Hello? Is someone in there? I saw the firelight in the road. Aye. Traveller, there's a fire if you need it, and shelter from the wind. Thank you. I didn't expect to find anyone out here. Not many pass this way. Cave keeps the rain off at least. You're alone here. Yeah, just me. Whatever travelers happen by. Sit, if you like. There's a fire. Not much, but it's warm. You live in this cave? For a time, I move with the seasons. Winter's coming, so I'll head to the valley soon. Your leg? It's an old wound. Healed poorly. Makes traveling harder than it once was. I'm Sir Roland of Eastmark. No need for titles here, Sir Knight. We're just two men beside a fire. Your armor's seen better days. Yeah, as have I. There's water in that skin if you're thirsty. And bread in the sack, though it's a day old. Thank you. So, what brings a knight to these woods? This old road's been abandoned for years. I was, returning from battle. At Raven's Gorge. I've heard no news from that direction. And you won't. There were no survivors to tell the tale. Except me. I see. No, you don't. My company are gone. 50 good men. Lord Morwen's forces, they knew we were coming. I don't know how, but they knew. Pass was narrow. The archers on the ridge. I never stood a chance. And you escaped. I fled. When our captain fell, I ordered retreat. But it was too late. They were surrounded. The men, they looked to me and I couldn't. I couldn't. I rode through the lines when a fog rolled in. Pure luck or cowardice rewarded. Would your death have saved them? I should have died with them. A knight doesn't abandon his men. Well, yet here you sit. What do you do here, old man? Besides offering shelter to disgraced knights. I collect tales, stories from travellers, songs from distant lands. I remember them. Well, you won't want mine. Every story has its worth. I can't close my eyes without seeing them. Without seeing their faces. Their eyes as they realised they were trapped. Tell me one of your stories. Something to push these ghosts away, just for tonight. What kind of tale would you hear? Anything, just anything to take my mind off it, please. Please. Well, I know a tale from the Eastern Kingdoms about a labyrinth and the shadows within it. Go on then. Well, long ago, in a kingdom whose name is now forgotten, it was said there ruled a queen who was as wise as she was fair. Her land prospered, but austerity draws unwanted attention, always does. So from the northern mountains came a sorcerer who envied all this queen had built. You see, 3 times she offered him a place at her court if he would share his knowledge. 3 times he refused. Mercy to enemies is folly. Perhaps, yes. And it's said that after the 3rd refusal, the sorcerer revealed his true intent. With dark magic, he created a labyrinth in the very heart of this kingdom. And within this labyrinth dwelled a creature of shadow. A creature, a monster that was said to feed on fear itself. Go on then. Each season, the sorcerer decreed, 7 of your people must enter this labyrinth. None shall return. This will continue until your kingdom knows the same despair and has been my companion. Why not just hunt down this sorcerer? Cut his head off and be done with it. Yes. Many tried. All failed, of course. The sorcerer had bound his life to the labyrinth itself. Only by defeating what lurked within could his curse be broken. All right, then. And so it was said that for 3 years, 21 souls entered the darkness each year. None returned. The Queen soldiers searched the labyrinth, of course, finding only empty corridors. No bodies, no blood, just silence and darkness. And then hope began to wither throughout the land. Fields went untended as farmers feared being chosen next. Markets emptied as merchants traveled elsewhere. Even the palace grew quiet, its festivals and music silenced by grief. Some people always give up too quickly. Do they? 3 years is a long time to watch your neighbors disappear. Then, in a small village on the kingdom's edge, lived a shepherd named Arian. Now, Arian, he tended his flock alone on the hillsides, keeping to himself mostly. Few knew his story, how his younger sister had been taken the previous year. And he carried that guilt with him, I bet. Yes, like a stone around his neck. Each night he dreamt of her face as the guards led her away to the labyrinth. Each morning he woke believing he had failed her. Let me guess, he volunteers to go to the labyrinth. He did. When the Queen's messengers came to the village square for the next choosing, drawing names from an iron urn, Arian pushed through the crowd. He stepped forward before they could call another name. Why would he do that? Sounds like a fool's errand. Bloody death wish. Well, the Queen herself came forward, you see, asking the same very question you just had. Why volunteer for certain death, shepherd? Arian looked her dead in the eye and said, because death is not certain until it comes, your majesty. And while there's life, there's hope. Pretty words, I guess, but still foolish. The crowd thought so too. They whispered behind their hands. They whispered that grief had addled his mind, that guilt had driven him to suicide. But Arian stood firm. My sister went into that darkness, he told the Queen. And if there's even the slightest chance that she lives, I must try to find her. And if she was already dead, then I'll avenge her, he said. Or join her. Either way, I'll no longer wake each morning with this weight upon my soul. That's what he said. I understand that feeling. He believed strongly his sister might still be alive somewhere in the darkness. Love makes fools of most men at some point. Suppose it does. I've seen men do far more dangerous things for far less worthy reasons. That night, before Orion was to enter the labyrinth, an old woman knocked on his door. She gave him a simple crystal pendant. This stone reveals the truth, she told him. In darkness it grows brightest. When facing your greatest fears, follow its light, and you may yet survive. A magic trinket to save the day. The next morning, as dawn broke cold and grey, Orion and 6 others stood before the labyrinth's entrance. This structure rose from the earth like a wound in the landscape. Black stone walls, stretching higher than the tallest trees. No windows at all, only a single massive doorway, sealed with iron bandit doors. The Queen's Guard formed a circle around them, not to prevent escape. None had ever tried to flee their fate, but as a final honor. The captain stepped forward and read the proclamation. It said, by decree of the sorcerer Morden, these 7 souls enter the labyrinth as tribute. May the gods receive them with mercy. And bloody empty words for the condemned. 6 others, an aging merchant, twin sisters from the northern villages, scholar, a blacksmith's son, and a young mother whose infant had been given to her sister's care. They all wept or prayed, but Orion stood silent, eyes fixed on the doors, pendant clutched in his fist. And the massive doors swung open, the groan of ancient hinges. Beyond lay only darkness, a blackness so completed it seemed to swallow the morning light. His companions hesitated, clinging to one another. Orion, gripping the pendant, was first to step inside. When the doors sealed behind them, the boom that echoed through the corridors panicked, scattered. The merchant ran blindly to the right, the sisters fled straight ahead. The scholar collapsed. The blacksmith's son tried to drag him up. The young mother stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. So what did Irene do? He called to them, trying to urge calm. But his voice was swallowed by darkness. One by one, they disappeared into different passages, till Orion stood alone at the entrance. And he lifted up the pendant, expecting the promised light, you see. But it remained dark as obsidian against his palm. Deceived by an old woman. Typical. I've been there before. Orion pressed on, regardless. At the first crossing of paths, he heard what sounded like his sister, crying from the left passage. He hurried toward the sound, but found instead a memory made real. It was the day he failed to save a village child from drowning. It was the dripping ghost that stood beside him, eyes accusing. Wait a minute. The labyrinth showed him his own memories. Yes. His deepest fears. And he stood frozen. It was just then he noticed the pendant had begun to glow. Faintly, but it was there. And this child approached, reaching for him. What did he do? He ran. Each new passage brought new terrors. Bottomless pit. The burning of his village, while he watched on, helpless. With each horror, he noticed something strange. The pendant grew darker, not brighter, contrary to the old woman's promise. So, wait a minute. The pendant was worthless. After hours of wandering, haunted at every turn, Orion's strength began to fail. At yet another junction of endless black corridors, he slumped against the wall, legs no longer able to carry him. His throat was raw from calling out his sister's name. Hands all bloodied from feeling along the rough walls. I cannot defeat my fears, he whispered into the darkness. They are too many, too strong. I was a fool to think that I could save her. At least he recognized the truth of it. Better to face reality than cling to false hope. The pendant lay cold and dark in his palm. Useless. Another false promise in a life full of them. nearly threw it away in anger. But something stopped him. A memory of the old woman's eyes, the certainty in her voice when she spoke truth. So what happened? Well, as he sat there, mind drifting between exhaustion and despair, a thought came to him. You see, the pendant behaved opposite to the old woman's promise, darkening near his fears instead of brightening. What if her words held a different meaning? What if facing your fears meant not confronting them, but accepting them? What? Accept defeat? Surrender to fear? Not surrender. Oh, no. Simply acknowledgement. Recognition that fear exists, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a part of ourselves to be understood. Accept his fears. Well, what good would that do? Arian took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and he thought of the drowned child, and he whispered, I failed you. I was not fast enough, not strong enough. I carry that failure with me. And just then, the pendant began to glow. Just slightly. Encouraged, Arian continued through the labyrinth. But now, instead of fleeing from his horrors, he acknowledged each one. Yes, he said, I fear the depths. I fear the fire. I fear being powerless. And what? And this helped him somehow. With each fear, he accepted. The pendant grew brighter. It led his way deeper into the labyrinth, till he reached the very center. There waited the shadow beast. It was a creature of swirling darkness with countless eyes. It had no fixed form. It shifted and flowed like smoke, taking shapes from Arian's own mind. And how could he possibly defeat such a thing? The beast lunged at him, and Arian raised the now bright pendant before him. But instead of attacking, he lowered his hand and he said, I see you. I know what you are. You are fear itself. My fear, made manifest when I accept that you are part of me.
You surrendered to it?
Not surrender. Acceptance. The shadow beast howled and charged, but as it touched Arian, something unexpected happened. Instead of consuming him, it began to shrink. With each fear Arian named and accepted, the beast grew smaller, until it was no larger than a house cat skulking at his feet.
This makes no sense. Fear doesn't simply shrink away because you acknowledge it.
Doesn't it? The greatest power fear holds over us is the terror of what might be. By accepting what he feared, Arian stripped the beast of its weapon.
Right. So what happened then?
What happened is the walls of the labyrinth began to crumble. Light poured in from above. Arian found himself standing in an open field, surrounded by all the missing villagers, all alive, including his sister. The sorcerer's curse was broken.
And the sorcerer?
He was found dead in his mountain lair, withered away when his creation was defeated.
Well, it's a neat ending. Too neat for real life.
Perhaps. It's only a story.
I thought you were going to tell me a story about slaying monsters with magical swords.
Well, I know tales like that too, would you? Do you prefer one of those instead?
No. Tell me another one. If you know any others.
I do know a tale about a great warrior and his broken sword. If that interests you.
It does? Yeah.
All right. See if I can remember. There once lived a legendary warrior named Caden. Now, Caden wielded a sword called the Blade of Dawn, and in 100 battles, he had never known defeat. His fame, well, it spread across 7 kingdoms.
Until one day, I assume.
Until one day, indeed. You see, Caden grew prideful. He began to believe it was his sword that made him invincible, not his skill or his purpose. In the greatest battle of his life against an enemy who threatened his homeland, something unexpected happened.
Did his sword break?
Yes,
against a seemingly weaker opponent. The blade of dawn shattered like glass. Caden, for the first time, felt so afraid. He fled the battlefield, leaving his men to continue the fight without him. A coward, then. It was said for months, Caden wandered the wilderness. He wandered haunted by his failure. And then one night, lost in a storm, he stumbled upon a small hut. And in this hut was an old smith who worked his forge despite the late hour. Let me guess, another magical stranger appears with convenient wisdom. Now the smith offered Caden shelter. When he recognized the warrior, he asked to see the remnants of this famous blade. Caden showed him the broken hilt he still carried. Could this smith remake it? Well, the smith said, I can forge you a new blade, but it will not be the same. He said, your sword broke because you forgot what you were fighting for. A blade with no purpose shatters against even the weakest conviction. That's ridiculous. Steel doesn't care about purpose. The smith required 3 elements to forge a new blade. Water from the pool of reflection, fire from the mountain of ancestors, and earth from the fields of tomorrow. Caden's first journey took him to the pool of reflection. It was a still mountain lake, so clear it mirrored the sky perfectly. Now, the smith had instructed him to look into the water and collect what he found there. And what did he see? Himself. Not as a great warrior, but as the frightened little boy who had first taken up a sword to protect his younger siblings after their parents died. He saw his true self. In the reflection, he watched his own journey. How protecting his family had grown into protecting his village, then his kingdom. How somewhere along the way, glory had replaced protection as his goal. That's true, that happens to many men. And it was then that Caden wept at what he'd become. And his tears fell into the pool. And when he collected the water in his flask, it glowed with a soft inner light. His second journey took him to the mountains of ancestors, where it was said ancient warriors were buried. At its peak burned an eternal flame. When Caden reached it, the flames parted, and he saw visions. Visions of those who had died following him into battle.
His fallen comrades.
Yes. They spoke to him not with blame, but with questions. What were we fighting for, Caden? Why did we die? He had no answer for them. He had led them into battle for his own glory, not for the greater purpose.
That's the worst of it. When they look to you for answers and you have none.
Caden knelt before these spirits until he found the words, and he said, I failed you. I led with pride instead of purpose. But I will make it right. When he collected fire in his torch, it burned blue and cold.
And the third trial? The fields of tomorrow?
The fields of tomorrow. A vast plain where it was said one could see glimpses of what might be. When Caden arrived, he saw only an empty field of tall grass. He was disappointed, and so he sat and he waited. As the sun set, the winds picked up, and in their whisper, he heard voices. Children playing, people working, life's continuing in peace.
I don't understand.
You see, these were the voices of those who would live if Caden returned to the battle. If he protected them as he had once protected his siblings. The future that would never exist if he remained in exile. When he gathered soil from the field, it felt warm in his hands.
So, the sword's strength came from his heart all along. Sounds like a child's tale. Smith's forged steel, not sentiment.
Is that so? Tell me, Sir Knight. Have you never fought harder for something you believed in? Pressed on despite wounds that should have failed you because something mattered more than pain?
That's different, that's determination. Willpower.
And what forges willpower, if not purpose? What tempers determination, if not meaning?
You twist words like a court poet. Sword is steel, nothing more.
If that were true, any farmer with a sharp blade could be a knight. Yet, they are not. Why?
Training, discipline, years of practice.
All shaping the hand that holds the sword. Just as purpose shapes the heart behind the hand.
Perhaps there's some truth in that, then.
When Caden returned to the smith, the old man worked through 3 days and 3 nights. He melted down what remained of the Blade of Dawn, mixing it with new ore mined from the mountains. As he worked, he added the water, fire, and earth Caden had gathered, binding them into the metal with ancient words and hammer blows.
What did the new sword look like?
It was plainer than the Blade of Dawn. No gold inlay, no jeweled hilt. Just steel with a faint blue tint, a leather-wrapped grip, and a guard simple enough for a common soldier. Yet, when Caden held it, the blade seemed to hum, something that wasn't quite sound, but rather feeling.
What did Caden see in the fields of tomorrow that gave him such courage?
The faces of those who depended on him. Not glory or legend, but simple protection. The ordinary lives that could continue only if he remembered why he first took up a sword.
Right. And did he return to battle?
He did. He found his army still fighting, though pushed back to the walls of their homeland. They had not given up despite his desertion. When they saw him return, some cheered, others cursed, but all made way as he approached the enemy commander.
And then?
The battle was fierce. Caden's new blade was not magical, but his purpose was unbreakable. He fought not for glory, but for the future he had glimpsed. And though he took many wounds, he prevailed. The enemy was driven back.
So, he won after all.
In a manner of speaking, yes, Caden never regained his former fame. Some still called him a coward for his earlier flight. But the land knew peace for many years, and the children in the fields of tomorrow grew up without knowing war. Caden considered this greater victory than any he had won before.
This Caden sounds like a fool, just as I was.
Most men are fools at some point in their lives. The wise ones learn from it.
It'll be dawn soon.
Will you continue your journey home? I'm going back. Back? To Lord Morwen's forces. They'll be camped at Blackwater Crossing by now, preparing to march on the capital. They don't know I escaped. They don't know someone carries a warning. One man against an army. Not to fight them. To delay them. The mountain pass narrows at Raven's Rock. A single rider could trigger a rock slide. It would buy the capital time to prepare for defences. You might not survive. I know. I don't know who you are, old man. But your tales have a strange power. Just stories. No. They're more than that. I've been running from shadows. The night is made for more than fleeing. What are you made for, Sir Roland? Protection. Not glory or legend. Just standing between harm and those who cannot fight. I won't make it back in time, will I? To save everyone? Probably not. But I might save some. That would be something. Something worth doing. When I was a boy, I always wanted to be a knight. Because of the stories. Glory and honor. I thought it would be so different. It never is. Were you a soldier once? You speak like a man who's seen battle. Long ago. Different war, same story. What happened to your leg? It was an arrow. Took me out of the fighting. Perhaps for the best. Your horse needs rest. Another hour would serve you both. No. No dawn approaches. Morwen's scouts will be checking the passes. I need the advantage of surprise. Take this, then. A dagger. It's good steel. Better than it looks. Sometimes the smaller blade finds its mark when swords cannot. I can't take your weapon. You're going to battle. I'm sitting beside a fire telling stories. Which of us needs it more? I thank you for this. For the fire. For the stories. There's still goodness worth protecting in this world, Sir Roland. Remember that when your arm grows tired. I will. May your blade stay sharp and your heart sharper still. If I survive this, Return your dagger.
If you survive, I'll tell you the tale of a knight who turned back.
I'd like to hear that one.
Go well, Sir Knight. Go well.
Another one will come tomorrow. They always do. The lost ones. The broken ones. The ones who need a tale to find their way. And now to sleep. And perhaps I'll dream of battles long past. Or knights returning home. Or perhaps just silence. Silence would be welcome.